Hello, my name is Brooke, and this presentation is covering the topic of literacy and HPE. Throughout the next few slides, I will be going over some of the expectations that we covered in class that line up with the college and career readiness standards for students. Let's first start with the reading expectations. My first one is number 6, expand general and specialized vocabulary through speaking, reading, and writing. This expectation looks at how students learn broad and discipline-specific vocabulary terms based on the literacy work that takes place in the classroom setting. While vocabulary itself is already a major literacy component when educating students, incorporating it with reading, writing, and speaking strengthens that connection between multiple components. Using this method when teaching will allow for students to get a bigger and better understanding of words and phrases across multiple content areas and their meanings. It also serves the purpose of widening the domain of knowledge that a student has, letting them gain a mastery in speaking, reading, and writing based off of the vocab being taught. In HPE, this expectation covers a huge majority of the content. While being a movement-based discipline, everything we do has some form of speaking, reading, and writing based around vocabulary. HPE uses this type of association between literacy and physical literacy in order to educate students on vocab through speaking, reading, and writing methods that are a little bit different than other major content areas. Although while different, they are still just as effective. A way I would teach this expectation is provided in my second assignment for this class. I implemented the use of blogging and a word wall activity with physical activity and skill development in order to provide students with a year-long vocabulary assignment. With speaking, this allows for students to collaborate with one another when creating the word wall in order to help each other out with the topic vocabulary we are engaging with. With writing, students will be creating blog posts that ask them to identify and define vocabulary terms and provide their thoughts on strengths and weaknesses within the content. And finally, with reading, students are able to revisit both their word wall and blog posts in order to study and achieve a greater understanding of the terms. Accommodation-wise, ELL students will be provided with images, underlining, and highlighting in order to create an even bigger association between their literacy work and vocabulary words and their phrases. For other students who have different types of disabilities, their accommodations would include social and instructional changes in order to accommodate for their specific trouble areas they might have. The next reading expectation is number 12, interpret and use data and information in maps, charts, graphs, timelines, tables, and diagrams. This expectation requires students to use literacy skills in order to correctly apply and understand data within different types of statistical items. While being able to just simply look at a chart or graph is one thing, it is another to be able to fully understand and read what the data is within it is specifically measuring. Using this while teaching is a great way to engage students with strategies and items that they will come into contact with during their future lives. In HPE, this expectation can revolve around a lot of our fitness and nutrition components. With science being a part of our background, collecting and analyzing data is something we actually do more often than not. Whether it's counting steps with a pedometer or looking at calorie intakes, we collect data to show it through different types of models. One way that I would teach this expectation is provided in my third assignment for this class. Based around the topic of heart rate and exercise, I created a lesson that had students creating a histogram graph to compare and contrast personal heart rates, rate of perceived exertions, and exercises. This lesson allows for students to collect data through physical activity and then question, analyze, and understand the same by graphing it. Students would use their literacy skills in order to create a graph as well as comprehend and understand why they're graphing and what it is they're graphing. Accommodation-wise, ELL students are given partners that would serve as a helper if they're having a hard time connecting the material to their graph. For other students who have different types of disabilities, they would receive social help as well as depending on what exactly their trouble area was. Now moving on to the writing expectations, my first one is number 26, generate, gather, plan, and organize ideas for writing to address specific audience and purpose. This expectation looks at how students go through a critical thinking process in order to create something that is written for a target audience or person. So, students are tasked with utilizing their ability to understand a topic and creating written research, projects, or activities that show their comprehension and knowledge behind it. Using this while teaching is a good way to have students think outside the box and come up with something that shows content mastery in their own words. In HPE, this expectation has more focus on the health side of the content. Students would still go through the critical thinking phase in order to determine what they write about, but most of the time the end product is going to be something like a plan, regimen, or list of tasks addressed to people looking to become more healthy or active. While HPE students might not write a ton of essays, they are creating documents that take in information and ideas from research, statistics, content, and their own thoughts. One way I would teach this expectation is provided in assignment 4 of this class. In that lesson, I had students working in groups to collaboratively create fitness plans. This activity requires them to generate personal and group ideas, gather exercise information from different materials, plan what exactly they will include in the document, and finally organize the plan in a way that they believe flows well based around the 5 health-related fitness components. Accommodation-wise, ELL students are being provided a lot of social, visual, and instructional help in order to ensure that they are able to connect to what they are reading and what they are writing. For other students who have different types of disabilities, they would receive instructional changes that would allow for them to participate in the work while still writing what they want to. My second writing expectation is number 32, write routinely over extended time frames and shorter time frames for a range of tasks, purposes, and audiences. This expectation has students use and practice their literacy skill of writing over different periods of time in order to develop a better comprehension of the action. By having students physically perform the task we want them to become better at, the easier it is for them to develop a mastery in it. In HPE, this expectation serves as a major purpose towards the goal of student growth. With our discipline having a strong reliance on showing improvement over time, writing over time is an easy and effective way in order to demonstrate that student improvement and awareness. HPE writing can mostly take on the identity of reflection, showing this expectation as something that would provide students with the ability to look back on their skills and reflect on topics such as strengths, weaknesses, growths, and future improvements. One way I would teach this expectation is through weekly writing journals. These will allow for students to take all of the physical and informative content they learned throughout the week and write about what all they were able to accomplish, why they are learning the content being given to them, and what their opinions are on the activities we've done or how they feel about their progress. At the end of the year, students would be able to look back on the whole semester and reflect on what they'd written each week. Unknowingly, the students would be increasing their competency with writing in general and on HPE-specific topics. Accommodation-wise, ELL students would get the opportunity to practice applying their reading and writing skills, whether it would be a broad or specific focus. For other students who have different types of disabilities, they would be given specific strategies that would allow for them to complete their assignment and receive help where they might be struggling. And moving on to our last section of communication expectations, my first one is number 49, participate in, collaborate in, and report on small group learning activities. This expectation has students work with their peers in order to collaboratively think and learn about specific topics. By having students use avid communication while participating in activities, they're being exposed to speaking, reading, and writing components, ultimately strengthening their discipline-specific and normal literacy. In HPE, this expectation can be utilized with a wide variety of classroom activities. With PE having a big focus on movement as a whole class, putting students in small groups to work together is something that is done quite often. When placing students together, it can allow for them to help each other out skill-wise and health content-wise. One way that I would teach this expectation is by including group stations when performing different types of movements, skills, or exercise activities. By putting students in groups that range from one person that might have a mastery of the skill to a person who might struggle, it can allow for their communication to help each other out, letting everyone become proficient. This leads to helpful brainstorming ideas, which ultimately comes out with informative strategies when working on assignments collaboratively. Accommodation-wise, for ELL students and others with differing abilities, communication through group work is a great way for them to utilize one another's strengths. It has always been said that teamwork makes the dream work, and in this case, pure communication and collaboration would provide that for everyone. My second communication expectation is number 43, use media, visual literacy, and technology skills to create and support the presentation. This expectation looks at how students are able to utilize the new and upcoming technological changes when stating and presenting their research, ideas, and content. This is important because of how the world is constantly changing, needing people to have the ability to adapt and change relatively quickly. The technology they are using should emphasize the content they are learning so that they are able to take that type of visual literacy and apply it into a creation of their own. In HPE, this expectation is used for two different major activities, projects and fitness activities. Project-wise, students use applications such as Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and many others in order to create presentations on content-specific topics. With fitness activities, students use objects such as pedometers, heart rate monitors, and online tracking applications in order to collect personal fitness data. One way I would teach this expectation is by assigning activities that work with the latest technological advances. Lately, technology such as popular apps, video games, and improved fitness watches would allow for me to let students explore content and present their findings. While each of these focus on more of a PE presentation, they can still represent the skills that students are being expected to know, understand, and comprehend. Each of these also have interactive demonstration leading to the connection between visual literacy and content literacy. Accommodation-wise, ELL students and others with differing abilities tend to use technology to their advantage. Whether it be utilizing visuals or interacting with specific skills, these strategies allow for students to learn and connect in many different and effective ways. To conclude, while it might not seem noticeable on the surface, this discipline strives to improve a student's literacy skills, no matter if it is general or discipline-specific. This class has allowed for me to identify different types of methods and strategies to implement literacy, and has let me utilize their application when planning lessons based off of the SOL standards. I feel that I now have the information and comprehension of literacy in order to make sure that the HPE content I go on to teach includes it so that my students receive an education that lets them critically think and become prepared for the real world.